Get your dirty hands off my table. Marcus Chen snarled as Maya Rodriguez reached to refill his water glass at Manhattan's most exclusive restaurant. The tech billionaire shoved her hand away roughly, causing water to splash across his mathematical equations scribbled on expensive napkins. Look what you've done. He stood up, towering over her. This proof stumped MIT's finest for months. Marcus held up the wet napkin, speaking loudly so other diners could hear. Solve this? I'll give you everything I own. He laughed mockingly. Then he deliberately swept his arm across the table. Salt, pepper, and crystal glasses crashed to the marble floor. Now clean it up. That's what your people are good for. As Maya knelt among the shattered glass, her brilliant mind absorbed every number from his soggy napkins. While he humiliated her publicly, she was quietly solving what he believed impossible. 3 blocks away at Lincoln Center's Avery Fisher Hall, the 15th annual $1 Million Math Challenge buzzed with anticipation. America's wealthiest minds gathered to pose unsolvable problems to the world's brightest mathematicians. Billionaire sponsors presented mathematical challenges that had stumped their research teams for months or years. Any contestant who solved a problem won the corresponding prize money. Marcus Chen had never lost. In 15 years as head judge, his challenges remained undefeated. His reputation was built on solving variations of Fermat's last theorem and building a tech empire on mathematical algorithms that revolutionized artificial intelligence. Ladies and gentlemen, Dr. Sarah Carter announced from the podium, this year's total prize pool exceeds $50 million. Our contestants include PhD mathematicians from Harvard, MIT, Cambridge, and Oxford. CNN prepared for their live global broadcast to 300 million viewers worldwide. Back at Le Bernardin, Maya Williams finished mopping up the mess Chen had created. Her manager, James, grabbed her arm. "You stay invisible tonight," he hissed. "Those VIP guests decide whether this restaurant keeps its reputation. One wrong move and you're gone." Maya nodded silently. She needed this job. Her grandmother's medical bills weren't paying themselves, and her student loans from MIT still haunted her credit score. 3 years ago, she'd been 1 semester away from her mathematics doctorate when financial reality crashed down. Her father's construction accident, her mother's diabetes medication, her younger brother's autism therapy costs. She'd chosen family. Now she cleaned up after people who would never know she'd once published original research in topology theory. Her professors had called her work revolutionary. Her thesis advisor had predicted a Nobel Prize someday. Fragments of conversations drifted over from nearby diners. "Chen's challenge this year is supposed to be impossible," whispered a woman in diamonds. "Something about infinite sequences and convergence theory. They're calling it the convergence paradox. No solution exists," Maya's hand stilled. Convergence theory. She'd written her undergraduate thesis on convergence patterns in infinite series. Despite her circumstances, her mathematical mind automatically began working through potential approaches. "The preliminary problems are just warm-ups," a man explained to his date. "Real challenge comes at the end. Chen always saves his impossible proof for last." Maya felt something stir in her chest. She knew that feeling of absolute mathematical certainty. But she also knew something Chen apparently didn't. Mathematical brilliance didn't announce itself with degrees or bank accounts. It whispered in the minds of people others overlooked. Her phone buzzed with a news alert. The $1 Million Math Challenge was starting in 1 hour. Lincoln Center's doors were opening to the public for viewing parties in the lobby, where giant screens would broadcast the competition live. James emerged from the kitchen. "Williams, table 12 needs their check. Move." As Maya hurried to comply, her mathematical mind was already 3 steps ahead. She had exactly 43 minutes left on her shift. Lincoln Center was a 12-minute walk. The competition's preliminary round would begin in 55 minutes. Maya's hands trembled as she untied her apron in the restaurant's back alley. Her shift had ended 3 minutes ago. Lincoln Center's golden lights beckoned from just 12 blocks away. She wasn't supposed to be here. The $1 Million Math Challenge wasn't for people like her, people who served coffee instead of discovering theorems. But Marcus Chen's soggy napkin was folded in her pocket. His equations burned into her memory. She'd found his error within 30 seconds of studying the scribbled proof. Lincoln Center's lobby was packed with curious onlookers watching giant screens broadcasting the competition. Maya slipped through the crowd, her server's uniform drawing dismissive glances from well-dressed spectators. On screen, Dr. Carter was introducing the final three contestants: Dr. Thomas Webb from Harvard, Dr. Elena Kowalski from Oxford, and Dr. James Liu from MIT, her former classmate who'd finished the program she'd been forced to abandon. "Before we begin the final challenge," Dr. Carter announced, "Mr. Chen would like to address our global audience." The camera panned to Marcus Chen, immaculate in his tailored suit, standing confidently at center stage. He held up a sheet of paper covered in complex equations. "Ladies and gentlemen," his voice boomed across the auditorium, "tonight I present the convergence paradox. My research team has spent 3 years developing this proof. It demonstrates that certain infinite sequences cannot converge under any known mathematical framework." The audience leaned forward. "This proof has been verified by teams at Stanford, Caltech, and Princeton." He paused for dramatic effect. "If anyone, and I mean anyone in this room, can find even the smallest error in this proof, I will personally write them a check for everything I own. My companies, my properties, my entire fortune. 50 billion, the audience gasped. Social media exploded. This wasn't just a mathematical challenge anymore. This was the bet of the century. Maya felt her heart hammering. In her pocket, Chen's napkin seemed to burn against her fingertips. She knew exactly where his proof failed, a sign convention mistake in the 7th equation that invalidated his entire framework. But she was nobody. A dropout, a waitress. Who would believe her? Dr. Carter stepped forward with legal documents. "Mr. Chen, this is highly unusual. Are you certain about this challenge?" "Absolutely," Chen declared. "I'm so confident in my proof that I'm willing to stake everything on it." "Because mathematics doesn't lie, Dr. Carter, and neither do I." The camera captured his smugness perfectly as he surveyed the stunned audience. 300 million viewers watched him place his signature on the legal guarantee. Lawyers scrambled to process the paperwork. In the lobby, Maya closed her eyes and made a choice that would change everything. She began pushing through the crowd toward the auditorium entrance. Security guards blocked her path. "Excuse me, miss. This area is for registered contestants and VIP guests only." Maya's voice came out steadier than she felt. "I need to speak with Dr. Carter. It's about the mathematical proof." The guard laughed. "Lady, half the people here think they can solve million-dollar math problems. That's not how this works." But Dr. Sarah Carter had noticed the commotion near the entrance. Something about the young woman's quiet confidence caught her attention. As head of Princeton's mathematics department, she'd learned to recognize genuine mathematical intuition. "What seems to be the problem?" Dr. Carter approached with curiosity. Maya pulled Chen's soggy napkin from her pocket. "There's an error in equation 7 of the convergence paradox. The sign convention switches from positive to negative iteration without justification." The auditorium fell silent. 300 million viewers watched through cameras as a woman in a server's uniform challenged the world's most confident mathematician. Dr. Carter examined the napkin, her eyebrows rising. These weren't random scribbles. The margins contained elegant derivations, shortcuts that most graduate students would miss. "Where did you study mathematics?" "MIT. 3 years of doctoral program before—" Maya's voice trailed off. Chen's laughter boomed across the stage. "Security, remove this delusional woman immediately. I don't have time for desperate people seeking attention." But Dr. Carter raised her hand. "Mr. Chen, she's identified a specific error. As competition director, I'm obligated to verify any mathematical challenge to your proof." "This is ridiculous," Chen snarled. "That woman was serving me coffee 2 hours ago. She probably can't balance a checkbook, let alone understand advanced mathematics." The crowd murmured with uncomfortable recognition. Many had seen her at Le Bernardin. Dr. Carter walked to the giant display screen. "Miss Rodriguez, please explain your objection to equation 7. Maya's hands shook as she approached the microphone. The auditorium stretched before her like an ocean of judgment. But mathematics had always been her safe harbor, the one place where truth mattered more than appearances. In equation 7, Mr. Chen assumes positive iteration when establishing the convergence boundary, she began, her voice growing stronger. But in step 12, he switches to negative iteration without adjusting the asymptotic behavior. She moved to the whiteboard beside the main screen, borrowed a marker, and began writing with fluid precision. If you're iterating positively, your limit approaches positive infinity along this trajectory. Her hand moved confidently across the board, sketching curves and mathematical symbols. But negative iteration creates a completely different convergence pattern. The limit actually approaches 2.847, not 0 as his proof claims. The 3 PhD contestants exchanged glances. Dr. Webb from Harvard grabbed his calculator. Dr. Kowalski from Oxford pulled out her laptop. Dr. Liu from MIT stared at the whiteboard with growing recognition. She's right, Dr. Liu whispered loud enough for his microphone to catch. The asymptotic behavior completely changes with negative iteration. Dr. Carter quickly verified the calculation on her tablet. Her face showed surprise, then something approaching awe. The correction is mathematically sound. Chen's face flushed red. This is impossible. My team spent 3 years on this proof. We had it reviewed by experts at Stanford, Caltech, Princeton. Sometimes, Maya said quietly. The most obvious errors are the hardest to see when you're too close to the problem. The auditorium erupted. Social media exploded with clips of the unknown waitress schooling a billionaire mathematician. Anyone can point out arithmetic errors, Chen snapped. That doesn't make her a mathematician. This was lucky at best. Dr. Carter studied her tablet. Mr. Chen, this wasn't arithmetic. Miss Rodriguez identified a fundamental conceptual error in convergence theory. Her correction opens an entirely new approach to infinite series analysis. The 3 PhD contestants were now huddled together, sketching variations of Maya's correction. What she'd revealed in 30 seconds was reshaping their understanding of problems they'd struggled with for years. Furthermore, Dr. Carter continued, her mathematical notation suggests advanced training. These techniques aren't taught at undergraduate level. Chen's confidence wavered. My team will need to verify this independently. Of course, Dr. Carter agreed. But according to competition rules, any valid mathematical objection to the primary proof requires the challenger to proceed to the next level of difficulty. The audience held its breath. Chen's eyes narrowed with renewed malice. Fine, if this woman thinks she's so clever, let's see how she handles problems that actually matter. Dr. Carter, present the secondary challenges. Miss Rodriguez, Dr. Carter addressed her directly, are you prepared to compete in the formal competition? The next 3 problems increase in difficulty significantly. Maya looked out at the sea of faces. Some showed curiosity, others skepticism. A few displayed outright hostility. But scattered throughout the audience, she saw something else. Hope. People who, like her, had been underestimated and overlooked were leaning forward in their seats. I'm ready, she said simply. Dr. Carter raised her hand to quiet the buzzing auditorium. Ladies and gentlemen, we have an unprecedented situation. Miss Rodriguez has successfully identified a fundamental error in tonight's primary challenge. The camera zoomed in on Maya's face as she stood beside the whiteboard, marker still in her trembling hand. Her server's uniform looked absurdly out of place among the formal academic setting, but her mathematical work spoke louder than any credentials. According to competition rules, Dr. Carter continued, any challenger who identifies errors in preliminary proofs advances to the formal competition tier. Chen stepped forward, his face a mask of barely controlled rage. Dr. Carter, I demand we verify her background first. This woman has no business competing against legitimate mathematicians. My business, Maya said quietly into her microphone, is mathematics. And mathematics doesn't care about my uniform. The audience erupted in applause. Social media feeds exploded with clips of her response. Fine, Chen said. If you want to play this game, let's raise the stakes. He gestured to his lawyers. Dr. Carter, I'm formally modifying my challenge. I'm doubling my wager, $100 billion. Everything I own, plus my company's combined assets. He pointed directly at Maya. But now she has to solve 3 problems, not 1. And she gets only 60 minutes total. The auditorium gasped. This wasn't just mathematical competition anymore. This was financial warfare. The rules do allow for modified challenges if all parties consent, Dr. Carter said. I accept, Maya said before Dr. Carter could finish. You don't understand what you're agreeing to, Dr. Webb from Harvard warned her. These aren't textbook problems. They're cutting-edge research questions that teams of mathematicians work on for years. But Maya's eyes were fixed on Chen. She'd seen that look before, the absolute certainty that he was about to crush someone he considered beneath him. Furthermore, Chen continued, the competition will now be broadcast live to global news networks. CNN, BBC, Al Jazeera. Everyone will watch this woman fail spectacularly. Dr. Carter looked concerned. Miss Rodriguez, you're not obligated to accept these modifications. No, Maya said firmly. I accept his terms, all of them. The viewing audience had grown from 300 million to over 500 million as news of the unprecedented challenge spread worldwide. Dr. Carter announced the new rules. 3 problems, 60 minutes total. Miss Rodriguez will work at the main board. The existing contestants will compete simultaneously for comparison purposes. And when she fails, Chen added with a cruel smile, I want her to admit publicly that she's nothing but a fraud seeking attention. I want her to apologize to every viewer for wasting their time. The cruelty of the demand hit the audience like a slap. And when I succeed? Maya asked. Chen laughed. You won't, but if I do? His lawyers were frantically trying to signal him to stop. If you somehow solve all 3 problems, which is mathematically impossible, then yes, you get everything. 100 billion and a public apology from me. The contracts were hastily rewritten and signed. Cameras positioned for optimal angles. Dr. Carter approached Maya privately during the setup. Are you certain about this? There's no shame in competing under the original terms. There's shame in staying silent when someone thinks they can humiliate you without consequences, Maya replied. I've been quiet too long. Chen made one final announcement. Ladies and gentlemen, you're about to witness the difference between real mathematical genius and desperate delusion. Watch carefully as this woman embarrasses herself in front of the entire world. But something had changed in Maya's posture. The trembling hands were steady now. She approached the massive whiteboard like a concert pianist approaching her instrument. The timer was set. The problems were sealed. 500 million people held their breath. The 60-minute countdown began with a thunderous beep. Dr. Carter broke the seal on the first envelope, revealing Problem 1, Advanced Probability Theory with Quantum Applications. Maya read the problem once, twice, then smiled slightly. She stood motionless for 30 seconds, absorbing the mathematical landscape in her mind. While Dr. Webb from Harvard struggled with the opening setup, Maya identified an elegant shortcut. Instead of brute-forcing through 17 variables, she recognized the problem as a disguised Markov chain. Her marker moved across the board with fluid precision. The audience leaned forward. Even Chen looked surprised at her speed. Dr. Carter opened the second envelope. Problem 2, Topological Manifolds and Differential Geometry. This was Maya's specialty from MIT. She'd published undergraduate research on manifold theory that her professors had called revolutionary. Her approach was so unconventional that Dr. Kowalski from Oxford stopped her own work to watch. She's using Riemann mapping in reverse, Dr. Liu whispered to his microphone. That's actually brilliant. The cameras caught the amazement on the PhD contestants' faces, but Chen seized the moment for psychological warfare. Ladies and gentlemen, let me share what I discovered about our challenger during the break. His voice dripped with manufactured concern. Miss Rodriguez was expelled from MIT for academic misconduct. The lie hit Maya like a physical blow. She stumbled, nearly dropping her marker. The audience murmured with uncertainty. That's not true, she said quietly. My sources at MIT confirm it, Chen continued smoothly. Plagiarism accusations. That's why she never finished her doctorate. Dr. Carter intervened with quiet authority. Mr. Chen, unless you have documentation, such accusations are inappropriate. She approached Maya's board, studying the work. Miss Rodriguez, your topological approach here is genuinely original. I've never seen this particular mapping technique. The validation steadied Maya's nerves, but the damage was spreading. News outlets began running "Mystery Mathematician's Troubled Past" headlines. Minutes remaining. Maya finished problem 2 with a flourish. Her solution was so elegant that the 3 PhD contestants applauded spontaneously. "We're getting reports that her solutions might be pre-programmed," one of Chen's lawyers announced loudly. This level of speed suggests technological assistance or prior knowledge. Security guards began inspecting the stage area. The implication was clear. No legitimate contestant could perform at this level without cheating. Dr. Carter opened the final envelope with ceremony. Problem 3, the infinite bridge paradox. Maya read it once and felt something click into place. This wasn't just mathematics. This was 3 separate mathematical disciplines disguised as a single problem: number theory, topology, and convergence analysis, all woven together. Then disaster struck. Her calculator malfunctioned. The screen flickered and died. "Technical difficulties happen." Chen shrugged with false sympathy. "Perhaps we should postpone while we find her a working calculator." "I don't need a calculator," Maya announced, her voice carrying new strength. Mathematics existed long before electronic computation. She turned to the massive whiteboard and began working purely from mental calculation. Viewers watched in amazement as she performed calculations that most people needed computers to verify. With 8 minutes remaining, Maya's exhaustion was showing. The mental strain of solving research-level mathematics while enduring public character assassination had pushed her to her limits. This is what happens when desperation meets reality, Chen announced to the cameras. Watch her collapse under pressure she was never qualified to handle. 6 minutes remaining. The final battle was about to begin. 5 minutes remained when Dr. Carter received an urgent message on her tablet. She read it twice, her expression shifting from confusion to shock. "Ladies and gentlemen," she announced, "I've just received communication from the International Mathematics Consortium. They need to make an immediate disclosure about tonight's competition." The camera zoomed in on her face. Chen looked annoyed by the interruption. The infinite bridge paradox that Mr. Chen presented tonight, according to documentation just submitted by MIT, Cambridge, and Princeton. This problem was designed specifically to be unsolvable, using conventional mathematical approaches. A murmur rippled through the audience. The PhD contestants stopped their frantic calculations and looked up. The problem was created as part of a research initiative to identify mathematicians who think beyond traditional frameworks. It requires what the consortium calls intuitive pattern synthesis, the ability to see mathematical relationships that pure, computational analysis cannot detect. Chen's face went pale. Dr. Carter continued. Furthermore, the consortium reveals that Mr. Chen's own solution, developed over 3 years, relied heavily on quantum computing algorithms and AI-assisted pattern recognition. No human mathematician has ever solved this problem using manual calculation alone. The auditorium fell silent. 700 million viewers were witnessing the rules of engagement completely change. "This means," Dr. Carter said carefully, "that Miss Rodriguez is attempting something that has never been accomplished in the history of modern mathematics. She's working without any computational assistance on a problem specifically designed to require technological augmentation." Chen stepped forward, panic creeping into his voice. "Dr. Carter, this disclosure is highly inappropriate. The competition parameters were clearly established." "Actually, Mr. Chen, the consortium's letter indicates that you were aware of the problem's special classification when you selected it tonight. The question they're raising is whether it was ethical to present an unsolvable challenge without disclosure." The twist hit everyone simultaneously. Chen hadn't just been arrogant, he'd been deliberately setting up an impossible scenario. But Maya Rodriguez was still working at the whiteboard, completely absorbed in her calculations. She was 4 minutes away from attempting something that the world's mathematical establishment considered impossible. The revelation hit Maya like a physical blow. She stopped mid-calculation, her marker frozen against the whiteboard. The problem she'd been confidently solving for the past hour wasn't just difficult. It was designed to be impossible for human minds to solve. Around her, the PhD contestants had already given up. Dr. Webb from Harvard shook his head in defeat. Dr. Kowalski from Oxford closed her notebook with resignation. Even Dr. Liu from MIT stepped away from his board. 3 minutes and 40 seconds remained on the countdown timer, but it might as well have been 0. How do you solve a problem that the world's greatest mathematical minds, assisted by the most powerful computers, considered beyond human capability? Maya stared at her work on the whiteboard. All her calculations suddenly felt meaningless. If the problem required technological assistance that she didn't have, then all her insights were worthless. The auditorium was no longer silent with anticipation. It was silent with sympathy. 700 million people were watching her inevitable failure. Miss Rodriguez? Dr. Carter approached gently. Given this new information about the problem's classification, no one would fault you for stepping away. What you've accomplished tonight is already remarkable. Maya looked at Dr. Carter, then at the expectant faces in the audience. She saw James from Le Bernardin smirking on a video call. She saw Chen's lawyers furiously working their phones. But worst of all, she saw the disappointment in the eyes of people who'd believed in her, the night shift workers, the single mothers, the students who'd been told they weren't smart enough. "I can't do it," she whispered. "I thought I could see the solution, but if it's impossible..." Her confidence, built up through years of mathematical study and natural intuition, crumbled completely. Chen sensed his moment of triumph. Ladies and gentlemen, this is what happens when delusion meets reality. Miss Rodriguez has been living in a fantasy where serving coffee qualifies, her to solve problems that stump the world's finest. Minds! But then came a voice that changed. Everything. Maya. Dr. Carter's voice was quiet but firm. She moved closer, speaking directly to her rather than the cameras. Mathematics doesn't care about classifications or committees or what's supposed to be impossible. You've seen something in this problem that others haven't. Trust your mind. Dr. Carter gestured toward the whiteboard. Look at your work. Really look at it. You haven't been solving 3 separate problems. You've been building something entirely new. Maya turned back to her equations. Through her tears of frustration, she began to see what Dr. Carter meant. Her approach hadn't been following traditional mathematical pathways. She'd been creating bridges between disciplines that weren't supposed to connect. Maybe the problem wasn't that she lacked the right technology. Maybe everyone else had been thinking about it wrong. 2 minutes and 15 seconds remained. Maya wiped her eyes and turned back to the whiteboard with renewed purpose. Dr. Carter was right. She hadn't been solving 3 separate problems. She'd been building something that had never existed before. "I see it now," she whispered, her voice growing stronger. The infinite bridge paradox wasn't about finding a single solution. It was about creating a mathematical language that could describe infinity itself. While Chen and his team had spent 3 years using quantum computers to brute force their way through calculations, Maya had been unconsciously developing something far more elegant. She wasn't computing the solution, she was discovering it. The first bridge connected number theory to topology. Where traditional mathematics saw infinite sequences as separate entities, Maya recognized them as points on a continuous surface. Her hand moved rapidly, sketching mathematical curves that demonstrated how infinite series could be mapped onto geometric shapes. "She's treating infinity like a landscape," Dr. Liu from MIT whispered in amazement. "Not a mathematical concept, but a physical space you can navigate." The second bridge linked topology to convergence analysis. Instead of trying to prove convergence through limit calculations, she showed how mathematical functions could flow like rivers across the topological surface she'd created. The audience was mesmerized. Even people without mathematical training could see the beauty in her visual approach. "This is mathematical poetry, not rigorous proof," Chen announced desperately. "She's drawing pretty pictures instead of providing numerical solutions." Maya paused and faced him directly. "Your elegant solution has one small problem, Mr. Chen," she said calmly. "You assume that infinity is always infinite," the statement hung in the air. Chen's face showed confusion, then alarm. "In your quantum-assisted proof, you treated all infinities as equivalent. But there are different kinds of infinity. Some are countable, others uncountable. The bridge you missed is that they're all connected. Seconds remaining. Maya turned to complete the third and most crucial bridge, the synthesis that unified all three mathematical disciplines into a single elegant framework. Her marker flew across the board, connecting equations with geometric shapes, linking abstract concepts with visual representations. The solution wasn't emerging from calculation. It was being born from intuition. Incredible, Dr. Carter breathed. She's created a unified field theory for infinite sequences, first seconds. Maya stepped back and surveyed her work. The entire massive whiteboard was covered with equations, diagrams, and connections that formed a coherent mathematical argument. But more than that, it was beautiful. There, she said simply. The infinite bridge paradox isn't a paradox at all. It's a map showing how different types of infinity connect to each other. The countdown timer reached 0. Silence filled Lincoln Center. Dr. Carter approached the board with her tablet, running verification algorithms against Maya's work. The 3 PhD contestants crowded around, checking her logic step by step. After what felt like an eternity, Dr. Carter spoke. The mathematical reasoning is sound. Not only sound, but revolutionary. Ms. Rodriguez has created an entirely new approach to infinite series analysis. The auditorium erupted, but Chen wasn't ready to concede. One professor's opinion doesn't constitute mathematical proof. I demand independent verification from multiple institutions. Of course, Dr. Carter nodded. I've already sent Ms. Rodriguez's work to MIT, Stanford, Princeton, Cambridge, and Oxford. Their response should arrive momentarily. The tension was unbearable. 700 million people around the world held their breath. Dr. Carter's tablet chimed with incoming messages. She read the first one aloud. MIT Mathematics Department. Her approach represents a paradigm shift in infinite series theory. We recommend immediate publication. Another chime. Stanford confirms the mathematical validity and notes applications to quantum field theory. Then Princeton, then Cambridge, then Oxford. Each message brought the same verdict. Maya Rodriguez had solved the impossible. Maya faced the cameras directly, her voice calm and powerful. The beautiful thing about mathematics is it doesn't care who you think deserves to be right. The auditorium fell completely silent. This wasn't just about solving a problem anymore. This was about truth confronting arrogance, merit defeating prejudice, brilliance refusing to be silenced by status. All eyes turned to Chen, the man who had built his reputation on mathematical supremacy, who had publicly wagered everything on his certainty, who had spent the evening humiliating the woman who had just proven him wrong. For 15 years, Marcus Chen had never been defeated. But 15 years of arrogance had just met 60 minutes of pure genius. The moment stretched like eternity. Chen stood frozen, staring at mathematical work that had just destroyed his supremacy. Before he could speak, Dr. Carter's tablet chimed with an urgent message. "Ladies and gentlemen," she announced, "I've just received an extraordinary communication from the International Patent Office. Ms. Rodriguez's solution methodology appears to have applications far beyond pure mathematics. Her unified approach to infinity analysis has immediate implications for quantum computing, artificial intelligence optimization, and cryptocurrency encryption protocols." A murmur rippled through the auditorium. The preliminary economic impact assessment suggests that companies implementing her mathematical framework could see efficiency improvements of 300 to 500% in computational processing. Chen's face went ashen. His entire tech empire was built on algorithms that Maya's breakthrough had just made obsolete. Furthermore, Dr. Carter continued, the Patent Office is requesting immediate documentation of Ms. Rodriguez's methodology. They're estimating the potential intellectual property value at... She paused, double-checking the figure. $200 billion. The auditorium exploded into chaos. There's one more thing. Dr. Carter raised her hand for silence. The Mathematical Consortium has just informed me that tonight's competition was partially designed as a talent identification initiative. They've been searching for mathematicians capable of breakthrough thinking that transcends traditional computational approaches. She turned to face Maya directly. Miss Rodriguez, they're formally inviting you to lead a new research institute dedicated to intuitive mathematics with full funding and academic support. But Chen still hadn't spoken. The man who'd wagered everything on his mathematical supremacy now faced a choice that would define the rest of his life. The silence stretched across Lincoln Center. 700 million people around the world waited for Marcus Chen to speak the words that would complete the most extraordinary reversal in mathematical history. His lawyers were frantically whispering in his ear. His associates had already begun backing away from him. But Chen was staring at the whiteboard where Maya Rodriguez had created something that transcended his understanding. His voice cracked. He cleared his throat and tried again. I need to verify the calculations myself. The audience held its breath as he approached Maya's work, studying each equation, each connection, each elegant leap of reasoning. Minutes passed in complete silence. Finally, he stepped back from the board. When he turned to face the cameras, 15 years of mathematical arrogance had been replaced by something approaching humility. Miss Rodriguez, he said quietly, your solution is correct, completely correct. The words seemed to physically pain him, but he continued. You've solved a mathematical proof that I could not, demonstrating superior mathematical intuition and problem-solving ability that I failed to recognize. He paused. I built my career on being right about mathematics. Today I learned something more valuable than being right. I learned how to be wrong with dignity. The auditorium erupted in thunderous applause. But the most powerful moment was watching Maya's quiet grace and victory. No gloating, no revenge, just the serene confidence of someone who had proven that brilliance couldn't be silenced by prejudice. 6 months later, Dr. Maya Rodriguez stood in her new office at the Institute for Intuitive Mathematics, writing equations that would reshape humanity's understanding of infinity. The walls were decorated not with awards, but with pictures of students from underfunded schools whose mathematical talents she was now helping to discover. She kept one memento from that night at Lincoln Center, Chen's soggy napkin, framed on her desk, not as a trophy, but as a reminder that genius often whispers in places where others refuse to listen. The final shot showed her teaching a classroom of diverse students, writing on a whiteboard with the same fluid confidence she'd shown that night. Above the board, a simple message. Mathematics doesn't care about your uniform. It only cares about your courage to see what others cannot.